This is going to be a story how I inherited a 1956 Thunderbird hardtop convertible. Yeah. Now you can find them the year before and the year after, but get it this year, it's worth some money. It's the market price in mint condition is 60 grand. But we're going to get back to that. I got to give you a backstory. My late husband had restored that car. He went to one of those places, that you pawn your car, but you keep it. Yeah. Only he couldn't pay it, and he didn't want to lose the car, so he rented a storage unit. One of those storage units you might put furniture. He rented one, and he drove it in there and parked it, and that's where it sat for 20 years. Okay, we met. We got married, and he had passed away. His daughter tried to get that car. She wasn't getting that car. I would have burned it. You see, the other backstory is when his daughter was, I guess, a teenager, and he was a little too strict. He ended up being a single father because his late wife passed away, TikTok, from asthma. And he had to raise her on her own since she was 7, 8 years old. Well, girls that get teenagers, they have boyfriends, and she had this boyfriend. Daddy didn't like it. She ran away, and this boyfriend and his parents hid her out. Yeah, hid her out. It took him a year to find her and drag her back home. Okay, years go by. His daughter, she ends up breaking with that boyfriend, and she marries this guy. But that didn't work out. And she ran into her boyfriend again. They ended up getting married. Well, she made a promise to her dad that his father and mother would never move in with her and her boyfriend, hence husband, right? Because he felt bitter. He felt that they were, and they were. You don't hide somebody's kid out. And if you ask, well, they must have a reason. Well, yeah, he was too strict. He didn't abuse her. He didn't do anything like that. He was just too strict. And even if they thought so, you don't hide the child out. That's not okay, right? So he was very, very bitter. Well, there came a time where her mother-in-law passed away, and they decided she was going to move her father-in-law into their home after she promised her dad that that would never happen. When he did that, they stopped talking. There was no more communication at all. Now, I know she had paid his cell phone. Well, he went and had it turned on in his name and had her blocked. Long story short, we met, because this video would be too long if I go into a whole bunch of details. We got married, and I lost him 6 weeks later to cancer, lung cancer. To answer the unspoken question, no, he didn't smoke. He did at one time, but when he married his first wife and she had asthma, he quit. So he hadn't smoked in over 20 years. And the kind of cancer he got, anyways, didn't happen to people who smoke. As the doctor explained, this is usually hits non-smokers, more women than men, and more Asian in the Asian race. It is unusual to hit former smokers or former smokers. Okay. I made some promises to my husband because he did not want his daughter husband to get hold of that car. And I said, she's not getting hold of that car. I will destroy it. I will burn it. I will make it so it can never, ever be restored. And I would have. I also kept his promises that the only thing his daughter would get was pictures of her mom and her jewelry. She got those. It's not that he had. I mean, the car was the most valuable thing he had. Okay? And I was cleaning out his storage units, and he had two. One of them the car was in. I didn't think there was going to be any hurry to change it in my name, except she tried to be slick. She went down to DMV. She tried to get it in her name so she could come get the car. Well, DMV says, well, first we need a death certificate, and she would have to prove that she was first in line of inheriting, right? Honestly, if she had that in her hand, she probably would have stole the car, and there would have been a court battle. When she told me that, I looked at her. So I called DMV, and I did exactly what they told me to do, because it had been stored in there so long, it no longer had a title. So they had to get the VIN. And they said as far as the lien that place had, it would be no good at this point. Okay. So I called a tow truck because I'm doing what an expert told me, because I had an expert come and value the car. And he says, do not start it, because if your husband didn't drain the fluid, it could damage the engine or do whatever it does. So I had a flatbed come, towed it into DMV. I went in, I showed my marriage certificate and his unliving, certificate. And they checked the VIN, boom, boom, boom. They made the title into my name. Then I told the daughter, I says, I am the legal owner of that car. It is legally in my name. I wasn't trying to take the car. I said, yeah, you were. You went down to DMV to attempt to get that car registered in your name so you could come get the car and I couldn't stop you. And I looked at her straight in the eye. I says, you wouldn't have got it anyways. Because the minute you'd have done that, I would have destroyed that car. I would have, right there where it stood, I would have set that thing on fire. I would have totally destroyed it. I'd have poured syrup in the tank. I would have poured sugar in the tank. Then I would have set it on fire. I says, I would have destroyed that where it can't be ever be fixed or restored. She just looked at me. I says, yeah. I made promises to your dad, and I kept them. So I had an expert come down, and he kind of laughed because the tires, that he put them on new when he restored it, like 20 years prior. And he started laughing. He says, the tread's not even been used, but he says, it's been so long that the tire itself is right. So he said, your tires are going to have to be replaced. He says, I'm not going to have you take the hard top off see the soft hood part of it, we can assume that's probably in the same condition. He says, the paint job's good. The inside is excellent. He says, what you got here is what we call a good project restore car. He says, under fair market value, you're looking at $25,000 to $30,000. He says, it'll probably cost you $2,000-3,000 to get this thing to be restored. Maybe $4,000. He says, I would recommend strip it of its paint because he used the right color but the wrong type of paint. So he says, you're looking at probably about $4,000, maybe $5,000. He says, you do that, you're going to have a $60,000 car. Well, if I'd had a place to put it, I'd have never sold it. Never. But I did. I sold it for $25,000. I was homeless at the time, so I bought a small motorhome. And that's the story how I inherited a 1956 Thunderbird hardtop, soft-top convertible. If you don't believe what they're worth, look it up. Look it up. Look at the ones that are mint. And it was like the expert said, yeah, it's going to be worth $60,000. What, you restore it again? He says, that's not an issue. He says, it's got no rust. But he says, you are going to have to put some money in it to get it up to par, about $4,000 or $5,000. He says, just a guess on top of my head. It could be a little less. It might be a little more. But like I said, if I'd had a place to keep it, I would have never, ever sold it. I would have restored it. But that's the story.